All right, we can get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paloma Mayorga. I am the development coordinator at Big Medium. Thanks everyone for joining us today for Coffee Chats. These talks are part of our Creative Standard program through which leaders in the creative community share their personal and professional experiences to inspire others pursuing careers in art. Today, we're thrilled to have with us Katie Stahl and Lucy Gross, co-founders of Sage Studio, as well as artist and puppet maker extraordinaire, Sam Eiler. Located in one of the art galleries at Canopy, Sage Studio is a studio and gallery space that supports artists with intellectual and developmental disabilities as they navigate their careers as artists and help to amplify their voices in Austin's contemporary art scene. I'll hand it off to Katie and Lucy so that they can further dive into what they do at Sage Studio. Welcome, y'all.
Hi, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
So my name is Lucy Gross, and I'm one of the co-founders of Sage Studio. And my background is in social work and special education. And I'll hand it off to my co-founder.
Yeah, hi, my name is Katie Stahl, and I am also one of the co-founders of Sage. And my background is in art education, and specifically community-based art education. And I am a practicing artist as well. And then I'm going to hand it over to Sam, who is going to tell us a little bit about his background as an artist.
Sam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. My name is Sam Eiler. I don't know if you can see my video, but it's not even working. I don't know why.
But that's okay because Sam is a pro. He has actually been interviewed on Co-op Radio, and Sam and Katie and I had the opportunity to present at South by Southwest. So Sam, you've got this. Sam, can you tell us a little bit about what kind of art you make?
Well, I make cartoon art. Well, and sometimes I trace on the computer.
And how long have you been making art, Sam?
Well, when I was a kid, I started to draw SpongeBob on the coffee table, my mom's coffee table.
And what'd your mom think about that?
And what do you think about that, Mom?
It was interesting, and I still have it. I love it. It's cherished.
Of course.
And now, Sam, in addition to drawing, you also do some 3D art. You had a show recently, a solo show where we showed a bunch of your what?
The Muppets.
Yeah, so you make really incredible puppets, right?
That's right.
And what do you make your puppets out of?
I make them out of foam, fleece, felt, fur.
Yeah,
ping pong balls.
They are really incredible. I've gotten a chance to come into your room, which is also kind of your workspace right now. And some of your puppets are really small, and then some of them could fit 2 whole people inside, right? Like Snuffleupagus.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Big Bird.
And Big Bird, that's another really big one. Well, Sam, is it okay? Can we ask you some more questions at the end?
Of course.
Okay, thanks so much, Sam. So before Katie and I started working with Sam, we originally met when both Katie and I were art instructors at Arc of the Arts, which is another Austin-based, it's a rehabilitation center for adults with disabilities with a focus on art making. And Katie and I instantly connected over our sort of shared aesthetics. We both, were really drawn to a lot of the same types of pieces. And one thing that we talked about while we were working there is, there was this incredible wealth of talent, but we felt like a lot of the patrons of the art shows and a lot of the people that were seeing the work were a really small community of disability service professionals and folks that, probably Katie and I had corralled into coming to the shows, as well as artist families. And we really wanted, these incredible artists to be part of the larger contemporary art conversation in Austin. And so both Katie and I sort of went our separate ways, and then, kind of kept texting back and forth about this idea. And in 2007, sort of decided, you know, that we would try it ourselves. And so, excuse me, 2017. I feel like time means very little right now. So in 2017, Katie and I started working out of my kitchen table where I sit right now. And we started off just by working with one artist, Rick Fleming, who was an artist that we had met working at the Arc. And we started just super small, buying supplies for Rick, and then slowly expanding to include another artist. And we transitioned to working from Katie's home studio. And then sort of by chance, Katie was perusing Craigslist one day and stumbled upon a refurbished shipping container, which felt like the natural progression from a kitchen table to a tiny home studio to a shipping container. And so, you know, it had always been our goal to incorporate an exhibition sort of component into the studio art making. And so we moved into our studio off Airport, and most recently made the transition over to Canopy. And I think that, you know, our move to Canopy is very much sort of inspired by our mission, which is to integrate these fantastic artists and these voices into the larger art conversation. And, you know, East Austin and Canopy specifically really is the epicenter of all these exciting things that are going on in the Austin art community. And we're just really thrilled to be able to, you know, introduce our artists to the amazing working artists at Canopy, and hopefully sort of inspire some collaboration and some dialogue between those communities. And Katie is going to tell you a little bit about our model.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. So we refer to ourselves as a progressive art studio. And there are progressive art studios all across the country, and in fact, all across the world. And so, you know, we're far from the only organization doing what we're doing. And just to give you a little bit of history, programs like ours, so art-specific workshops for artists with disabilities, first came about in the 60s in Europe. And the first program in the United States that was a community-based program, and it was a non-therapeutic model. So that's a big distinction for us. People often, you know, hear what we're doing and they say, "Oh, you're doing art therapy," and you know, we say, "Well, no, we're not. You know, Lucy and I are not trained art therapists, so that would be irresponsible of us to be doing art therapy." You know, and while both of us, I think, believe that art is, you know, it's sort of innately therapeutic, because we do have this exhibition component to what we do, like Lucy mentioned. We're very much, you know, we're focused on the end product. And so the first space like that opened in the States is called Creative Growth, and it's still there today. I highly recommend, if you are in the Bay Area, that you go pay them a visit. And when they opened their art gallery in 1980, that was the first art gallery in the world that was dedicated to the work of artists with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so there are actually 3 art centers that are in the Bay Area that were all started by the same couple. He was a psychologist and she was an artist and an art educator. And I think Lucy and I both have had the good fortune of being able to visit these programs. And in fact, it was a visit to Creativity Explored, which is the sister program to Creative Growth, that inspired me to do, you know, to sort of make this my life's work. And I think Lucy had a similar experience. And so when I first visited, it was about 13 years ago, and it was an experience like I've never had before. And just to try to sort of paint the picture, if you haven't been there, you know, you walk in off the street. This is in the Mission District in San Francisco. And, you know, at first it looks like a gallery, like any other gallery. And I think the exhibition at the time that I went, it was comic inspired art. So the art was great. But then you walk through this doorway and you're in this very large kind of warehouse-like space. And that's the studio. And so, you know, you walk in and there were probably 50 or 60 artists working on the day that I went, and you can just walk around and talk to the artists and check out the work that they're making. And it's, the amount of creativity in that room was unlike anything I had seen before. And when I, you know, got back to Austin, I wanted to find something similar, and that's how I ended up finding the ARC. And then when I went to graduate school, I was lucky enough to be able to do my thesis on Creativity Explored. So I went back, and it's just this sort of sense of community and all these artists working together in one space. It's such a unique thing. So absolutely, if you're in that area, definitely recommend that you go check them out. So in a lot of ways, we're sort of based on these other organizations that have been around a lot longer than we have. But as Paloma mentioned, you know, we are currently in one of the trailers at Canopy, which again, if you haven't seen those, recommend you check those out as well, because they are these very fantastic and very compact spaces that, you know, we are using as both a studio and a gallery. So in terms of size, we are quite a bit smaller than these other programs that I've mentioned. But we do, you know, still operate as both a studio and an exhibition space. You know, we have our studio program. So we have artists like Sam, who, you know, prior to last year, so before everything shut down, was coming into our space and working with us. And then we have our exhibition program. And so, you know, through that, we do bi-monthly art shows. We have our online shop, and then we represent the work of both our artists who work with us in the studio, and then also we work with artists who don't work with us either because they're working in a medium that we can't accommodate in our space. We have a really wonderful artist by the name of Anna Burke, who's a weaver, for instance, and we don't have the space, nor do Lucy and I have a background in weaving. And then, you know, so we have artists like that who work in different mediums. And then we also have artists who live elsewhere in Texas and can't travel to the studio. And then in the past year, we've also begun to work with artists who work all over the country. The sort of, when Lucy and I sat down and started talking about what we wanted our program to look like, we came up with 5 sort of guiding principles. And the main one, we don't have to touch on all of them, but the major one is that we view our participants first and foremost as working artists. And that kind of guides everything else that we do, both in the studio and in the gallery. And, you know, our mission is to work with these artists to build a portfolio of work for exhibition, and then to pursue a career as an artist, you know, however that might look for each individual artist. So like I said, you know, we're not doing art therapy. We don't consider ourselves art teachers. We don't have a formal curriculum, and we're not, you know, that's not what we're doing. We sort of see ourselves as facilitators. And our role is to support the voice of each individual artist. So I'm going to pass it back over to Lucy, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to this past year specifically.
Obviously, we've all become Zoom experts in the last, 12 months, which is not a skill that I was looking to acquire, but something I've become very comfortable in. So like so many people, across all sorts of professions and across the entire world, we sort of had to very quickly shift our practice and figure out how we could take this model that was really built on being a community, being together with our artists, having in-person exhibitions, and figure out how to keep that momentum going in a way that was going to be safe and sustainable and still keep our artists connected. Because, you know, one thing I think we've all been experiencing some degree of isolation over the past 12 months, but we know that people with disabilities are at an even greater risk of isolation. So it was really important to us to figure out how we could stay connected with our artists and how we could keep them working. And so one of the first things we kind of thought of, and Sam was part of this project, was we looked at if any of the artists were up for taking on commissions. So we sort of launched this commission project. So our very first artist that I mentioned earlier, Rick Fleming, started doing commissions on tote bags. So Rick sort of works primarily on celebrity portraiture and pop culture art. And so he started taking, you know, commissions for, I think he ended up doing 5 Dolly Parton tote bags, several Nick Cave tote bags, and among, I think our last count was he was somewhere around 50 tote bags in the project. And so that was a really fun way. And what we sort of did is, since we weren't able to work with Rick in the studio, we would order supplies and have them either delivered, or we would deliver them to his house. And then we would sort of simulate that studio experience by Zooming with him. And those sort of became our studio hours. And as much as Rick and so many of our artists are really autonomous and very capable of working completely independently, I think that community element of being with Katie and I in the studio, that Zoom did sort of, you know, simulate that to some degree. And so it was really important for us to kind of keep that contact with our artists. And then Sam was another artist that was up for doing some commissions. Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about the Sculpey portraits that you made?
Of course, of course.
So we would send you pictures, and then what would you do?
Well, they would send me pictures, and then I do the clay copy of them. It's just like what I did for Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, so they were kind of Wallace and Gromit-esque, but people would send in like pictures of their family or pictures of them and their dog, right?
Right. And I would draw them out.
Yeah, so Sam has done some really great, Sam is an incredible portrait artist across several different mediums, which is something I'm always really jealous of. Katie and I still have yet to find a medium that Sam can't work in, which is pretty unusual for an artist. Sam's done portraits at exhibitions that we've had where people sit down and he'll draw them. But part of the commission project was we would send Sam Sculpey clay, and then Sam, and with the help of his mom and dad, would fire his Sculpey portraits, and then we would ship them out to people all across the country. And so those were cool.
What do you mean fire them?
Do you have to bake the Sculpey?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sorry, that's I grew up around a mom who's a potter, and so I think I always say firing when I probably I mean baking, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Sam did a really awesome job with that. And then another one of our artists that participated in the commission project was Gav Sears. He's an artist based in San Marcos. And Gav does these really incredible line drawings, mostly of landscapes and buildings. And so, you know, for example, one of Gav's pieces was someone sent in a New York apartment, which was the first apartment he and his now wife had rented and lived in. And so these projects were like just sort of a marriage of our artists and what type of work they were sort of already doing. Again, Sam's an incredible 3D artist. Rick was already sort of drawn to celebrity portraiture, and Gav was already doing these really, you know, delicate, beautiful architectural drawings. And so we wanted to figure out, if we weren't going to be having shows, how could we keep them working, and how could we stay engaged with them and the community. So that commission project was sort of our first foray into figuring out what, you know, the pandemic was going to look like for us. And then from that, we have gotten to do some really exciting collaborations. So Rick was commissioned to do a tote bag with a portrait of the then presidential candidate, Joe Biden, and his running mate, Kamala Harris. And just by chance, that picture got shared on social media. And Rick has been a long time Biden supporter, and he was, I think, much more interested in doing that commission than he was in his 5 Nick Cave drawings that he ended up being asked to do. So the photo got shared, and, you know, sort of in the way that weird internet stuff works, got passed around. And ultimately we were contacted by the Joe Biden campaign and asked to set up a Zoom meet with Rick and Joe Biden. And then Rick was also commissioned to do some limited edition tote bags with a portrait of Joe Biden that was sold through their campaign. And so that was a really exciting, obviously, collaboration. And we actually got to film that at Canopy. I think that's probably the most time we've gotten to spend in the studio at that to date, but you know, it was a really special, fun day. And most recently, we've gotten to collaborate with Vans Shoes. So they launched a program in the pandemic called Foot the Bill, which is an initiative to help support small businesses that are struggling during COVID. So we applied and were chosen, and we selected one of our artists. He's a Dallas-based abstract artist named Charlie French, and he does these really incredible, intuitive, joyful abstract paintings. And in preparation for our next show, which is launching in April, Charlie has been doing some really bright, colorful, spring-inspired paintings. And so we ended up taking some sections of his painting and, in collaboration with Charlie and Vans, designing a shoe with Charlie's work on it, and a t-shirt, which is sold through their website. And one of the really amazing things about the Foot the Bill initiative is that we get all of the Sage Studio gets all the net proceeds of those sales, which is obviously at any time would be huge, but in a time where so many businesses are kind of struggling to make it work, really means a lot. So that's been really exciting. And again, I think those sort of large scale collaborations fit within our model, which is to create more visibility for these incredible artists and to really show, you know, I think there are certainly, as Katie said, is a community of people that have gotten a chance to visit these progressive studios like Creative Growth and Creativity Explored. But then there are other people who maybe are just sort of starting to find out about these type of artists and these type of spaces. And so the more visibility we can give to these artists, hopefully that opens up not just for Sage artists, but for artists like Sam and Rick across the country, that, you know, these are incredibly and talented working artists, and to hopefully sort of create more inclusion. And, you know, I think ultimately our goal is to be able to just operate as a gallery without having to have language around, you know, any sort of specific disability or anything like that, because Sam, like all of our artists, is, you know, first and foremost just an incredible artist, and has been working with us since his senior year in high school. So Sam, I believe, is one of our youngest artists, and he, from carving SpongeBob SquarePants into his mom's table at a very young age, has been making incredible work and just continues to be astoundingly creative. So we feel super lucky to be working with him and other folks. Another thing is we knew that we couldn't, you know, have safe in-person exhibitions. So we shifted our exhibition calendar to be virtual only, which is something we had never done before, and ultimately has been really exciting in some ways. I mean, I think I don't mean to be like Pollyanna about the whole thing. I think we are very excited to get back to being able to have in-person exhibitions, but certainly the silver lining of this is that it's pushed us to try something new. And I think ultimately it's been really been really exciting because in shifting to virtual exhibitions, we've been able to include artists that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to work with. So prior to the pandemic, we had exclusively shown Texas-based artists with disabilities. And we have now, we just yesterday wrapped our second virtual exhibition, the Nostalgia Show, which was all work inspired by sort of bygone eras, specifically the 80s and 90s. And we had a chance to work with artists and progressive studios from across the country. And our first exhibition that we sort of launched virtually was called Homemakers. And we were sort of looking at artists like Sam and Rick, and we were curious, you know, what effect it had had on artists working from home. As Katie said, the environment that a lot of these studios create, you know, this community that has existed in spaces like Creative Growth and Creativity Explored, and to a smaller degree, Sage, you know, that community within the studio environment has been so key. And so what does it look like when those artists don't have that community, and how does that influence the type of art that they're making? And what does home mean when all of us are, you know, sort of spending so much time in one place? And so both of those exhibits were really fun. And we feel really, really lucky to have been able to meet and work with so many amazing folks and to expand sort of our Rolodex of artists. And so, you know, I think that there's certainly challenges to being virtual. I think we're excited to be able to, you know, get back, but I also think that this has shown us that, you know, virtual programming will probably always be a part of what we do. Another element that we launched is we've done 2 virtual studio sessions. So we invited professional artists to lead studio sessions where artists with and without disabilities were invited to join in on a Zoom. And our first exhibition, or our first studio session, was inspired by painting yourself or drawing yourself as a wrestler. And then most recently for the Nostalgia Show, we did a studio session led by a comic book artist from Minneapolis, where participants drew themselves in maybe their best or worst fashions of the past. And those were really fun. And I think that, you know, again, the more that we can get artists with and without disabilities sort of working alongside each other and, you know, sharing that work, the more we can sort of work toward an inclusive and just all-encompassing environment where artists are just free to be artists. And so those have both been really positive things that have come out of an admittedly very strange time. And we have some other exciting stuff coming up. And so I'm going to hand it over to Katie, and she's going to tell you what we have in store for the rest of the year.
Thanks, Lucy. So as Lucy mentioned, the next show that we have coming up is called Spring Work, which I think will give you an indication of sort of the theme of the show. But it's opening in April, and it's a 2-person show. So Charlie French, who Lucy mentioned, whose work is on the Vans collaboration, and then an artist that Lucy and I have known for a long time. We worked with her back when we were working at the ARC. Her name is Emily Dodson, and she does these very colorful and whimsical and joyful. The series that she's doing for the show are all oil pastel. But we are very excited, both because we've seen the work and we're really excited about the work, but also because this will sort of mark our return to in-person exhibitions. So this will be the first show that we're hanging it'll be the first show that we're hanging in our new space at Canopy. So we're excited for that, but also just the first show that we've hung, I think, since 2019. And so we're very much looking forward to seeing the art in the space all hanging together. And so we're going to do a sort of hybrid virtual and in-person model for this show, where we're open by appointment. And so we'll see how that goes, and we'll probably be using that model as we move forward. So that one is in April. And then in June, we're going to do a solo show with work by a Philadelphia artist named Anthony Coleman. And he has been a part of our last 2 virtual exhibitions, and we're huge fans of his work. And then the third show will be a show that we have been working on for years at this point. It feels like years. So it's a show by the name of Tandem that was supposed to open last March or April, and obvious reasons did not open. And so we've been kind of keeping it on the back burner because of the nature of the show. We really want to be able to do something in person. So for this show, we took 8 of our artists, Sam being one of them, and paired them up with 8 working artists in the community. The pairings were made based on shared medium, shared interests, shared themes, and a lot of the artist pairings had the chance to meet right before everything shut down. And so Sam got to meet his artist pair, who's an artist by the name of Mike Combs. And we had a fun day in the studio where the 2 of them got to kind of play around. And so the art is going to be sort of hung in tandem. And, the idea sort of being that this is going to be in an egalitarian space where the work of, the artists that we work with, so the work of artists with disabilities is, in the same space and on the same level as the work of these neurotypical artists. And so that's very much sort of in line with our mission and what we see as the worth of the work that the artists that we work with are putting out. And we're going to have the chance for Tandem to partner with another gallery in town, Martha's Contemporary, and they have a big, beautiful new space up in Hyde Park. And so we're actually going to be installing the show there, and we hope that that will, bring even more eyes to the show. And so that's one that we've been looking forward to for a long time. And we hope that, I think this is like the 3rd or 4th time that we've moved it. So we hope that this is going to be the one that sticks. So that's a little bit about what we have in store for this coming year. Like Lucy said, we're, at some point going to hopefully be shifting back to in-person studio sessions. Our space, which works really well for us, that also presents some challenges just because it is such a small space. We have to be really careful around, safety issues and wanting to make sure that when we do make that switch back to in-person programming, that we're doing it in a way that feels safe. But that is, we do have hopes to do that at some point, maybe in the summer. We keep saying, again, we'll see what sticks, but that's in our hopefully not too distant future. And then I think I'm going to hand it back over to Lucy and Sam, and we're going to hear a little bit more about Sam's work and also the show. We had one other virtual show last year that was a part of East, and that was the solo show that Lucy mentioned, Sam Eiler's Puppet Party, and that one was a really interactive show. So I'm interested to hear a little bit more about that from Sam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Sam, I was going to ask you, so I think, Sam, when I think of your art, I do think that you're not only an artist, but you're also sort of a performer as well. Would you say that's true?
That's true.
Yeah, so you do like the voices of your puppets and you kind of animate them so they move, and you have all of the like, you know, sort of mannerisms of them down. So when we were doing your show, Sam's Puppet Party, I came over to your house and I made some videos, right?
That's right.
And what were
You
the
did.
videos of? Do you remember?
The videos of how I do those other voices.
Yeah, and so you put all the puppets, we sort of took a video of each of the puppets that was for sale in the show. And then part of the exhibition had videos on our website of Sam sort of animating and doing the voices for each of the puppets, which I think really makes them come alive. And that was really cool. Sam, I was going to ask you, what are you working on now?
I'm working on Fozzie Bear's mom.
Oh, nice. And is this a puppet or is this a drawing?
A puppet.
A puppet. And Sam, how long does it typically take you to make one puppet?
It takes me about a day or 2 or 3.
Okay, depending on maybe how big or how complicated the puppet is.
No, so sorry about that. That's Grandma.
No problem. So you're making Fozzie. Do you have any other projects?
Fozzie's mom.
Fozzie's mom, excuse me. And are there any other projects that you are excited to get started, or are there any new types of art that you're looking to try?
Oh, well, I was just starting to work on my new sign for my new company.
Oh, do you want to tell us about your new company?
It's called Sam Eiler Art Incorporated.
Oh, that's awesome. And what type of things are going to go on at this company?
On my sign?
Yeah, so it's a sign for Sam Eiler Arts Incorporated. Is that just kind of the company under like that shows all your puppets and your drawings and things like that?
Well, actually my drawings.
Your drawings, okay. Yeah, and I know you and I have talked about one of your ambitions is that you would really like to put on like a full puppet show, right?
Yes, so wait until you see my puppet rack once I put it inside my room.
I bet it looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam, are you looking forward? How has it been working from home this whole time? Are you excited to get back into the studio? Do you like working from home? What do you think?
I can't wait to get back to the studio.
We're excited to have you.
Once we get our vaccine.
That's right.
And everything is back to normal.
Yeah, no problem. I think that we are going to have a lot of fun, and I've really liked, Sam, you've been so adaptable. You know, I think you and I have FaceTimed a couple times to work on things, and you've done an amazing job in kind of a hard time. So I'm really impressed with you.
Thanks.
Sam, is there anything else you want to share?
Oh, I got Kermit with me. Hi. Hi-oh, Kermit the Frog here. I think I already heard that what Sam just said. Like he's gonna start working on his new sign. And
Kermit, do you have any advice for young artists getting started?
Oh, yes. Sam, I just want to say thanks for still believing in me and Jim Henson. And thanks for making me out of some fleece, felt, and ping pong balls. Well, since you started working on it on me in 2012, because I started out as a sock.
Yeah, so
Kermit.
We got to see, Sam, a picture of the very first Kermit you made, right?
That's right.
And it was a sock puppet, and you have come a long, long way. And people can see some of your recent puppets on our website, including Kermit. Well, Sam, thank you. And thank you, Kermit, for joining us.
You're welcome.
And I think that Paloma and Justin, I think if we have any questions, we can open it up, but we just want to say a big thank you for having us and the opportunity to get to chat with you guys. I always say like it's very exciting to put on non-workout clothes You know, it's nice to have an excuse to brush your hair. So we appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on this meeting.
Thank you, Sam. Don't go anywhere just yet. I do have some questions for y'all.
Of course.
Yeah. So since we have Sam right now on the mic, when did you start making puppets? Or like, how did you get inspired to start creating puppets?
Well, I just saw a video of a man making Kermit out of real fleece, but instead I just started to make him out of a sock. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
He sure did. Yep, sure did.
That's really great. Do you, I know that you work in different mediums. Do you have like a favorite medium that you like to work in?
Well, I like to work in fleece.
In fleece?
And fabric stuff.
Okay. So the puppets are your favorite.
Yes. Especially drawing SpongeBob and the Minions and Patrick. And the science animals I just made up in my head.
That is really great. Well, thank you. And we do have a question from Sarah Ganter in our Q&A box. It says, has Stage done any curated traveling exhibits of your artist's work? And I guess this can be for Katie or Lucy.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. We try to do one sort of outside exhibition opportunity for our artists every year. This, past year was a little bit different, but the 2 years prior, we did the Outsider Art Fair in New York City. And so the first year that we did the fair, we did a retrospective of work by an artist by the name of David Zulak. And so he is an artist, he's now in his early 50s, and he lives in a small town outside of Houston called Louise. And he's been making art since he was, a boy, since he was 10 or 11. And when we got introduced to him, and Lucy and I were able to go to Louise and meet him and his mom, and his house at the time, he and his mom lived in one house, and then they had a second house next door that was just full of his art. And so for years and years, he's been making these drawings, and then his mom has been going and finding frames for him, and then bringing them back, and he does all his own matting and framing. And so there were just hundreds and hundreds of framed pieces of work, and then he also does these really beautiful, intricate paper models of houses. He did one of the school that he went to, and then you open up the roof, and he's done all the rooms. And so it's just really phenomenal work. And so we brought sort of a retrospective of work. I think the piece that we had that was the oldest, maybe he did when he was 11, up until he's still making work. And so the first year we did just a solo show of his work, and then last year we brought the work of Rick as well, and an artist named Laren who makes ceramic cars and boats and other things, and then Ike Morgan, who we did a solo show of his work. That was during East in 2019, I think. Is that right, Lucy? So so that has been the big sort of outside exhibition opportunity. And we hope we didn't make it this year, but we hope to continue to do that going forward, and then also look for other new opportunities.
Cool. So how do you guys select the artists to represent at Sage?
So we have an application on our website. So artists can submit their work, and, just like any gallery, we do have like a level of curation that we look for. And, Katie and I, again, I think part of what drew us to each other initially was, I think, both of us are attracted to a lot of the same work. But then, you know, some of our artists like Sam have come through other avenues. For example, I am good friends with who was formerly Sam's high school teacher. And, you know, she, I think, sent me a text message and just said, you know, I have this student who makes these incredible puppets, and, you know, I think you should check him out. And I think he would be a really good fit for Sage. And I was so excited and couldn't wait to see more of them. And again, it's pretty incredible to have an artist that's as developed in their practice at such a young age. Sam just celebrated his 20th birthday this weekend. And so it's, you know, Sam is already so accomplished at such a young age. And then, you know, since I have worked in, you know, the disability field for many years, you know, I've met other artists that we've kind of come into contact with through classes I've taught and things like that. So it's sort of a combination of, you know, artists submitting work to us, and then, you know, word of mouth in the community of, you know, artists that might be a good fit.
That's really great. I definitely see your your taste in the art. I was like looking through all of the artists that you have on your website, which is a really great resource for everyone listening in, to see all the different artists. And let's see, for those who are not able to travel to see the upcoming exhibitions, will the works also be available to view online?
Yes, our intention going forward, I think, you know, prior to the pandemic, we weren't really doing anything in terms of virtual programming. You know, we would put work that maybe didn't sell in the show online after the fact. But now that we have, you know, we've now have 3 virtual shows under our belt, I think we will continue to make it a part of all of our shows going forward. So that will be something where, you know, we'll sort of simultaneously launch the show in person and then have the work available online to view and to purchase as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, and again, for everyone tuning in, there's already some incredible works on there, and they have a shop tab that you can shop for some of these works. And then we do have another question. Let me see, Kara Fulbruge, I think is how you pronounce your last name, says, Katie and Lucy, so inspired by Sage Studio. Can you speak about funding, grants, donation, development for Sage? So I suppose maybe how one can support Sage?
Yeah, so initially we were entirely self-funded, which definitely informed us working out of my living room, and, you know, subsequently Katie's studio for over a year. And we are in the process of transitioning. We've been operating as an LLC. We're in the process of transitioning to a nonprofit or a 501c3. And we just finished another fundraising campaign through Amplify Austin. People are able to donate through our website. And we do, you know, we're always sort of looking for grants and things like that. Katie, is there anything I missed?
I mean, we've been fortunate, you know, in the beginning, we were able to get a couple of grants through the city, through the Cultural Arts Division. And so that was sort of what we needed to move away from it being a self-funded, you know, project. And then, you know, now we're at the point where, you know, revenue from sales, both, you know, original art, and then we also have built a pretty robust like merchandise program. And so we sell a lot of t-shirts and things like that. And then we do fine art prints as another way to just sort of diversify what we are offering. And also, you know, we want people to be able to, you know, we don't want everything to be at a really high price point. And so we've tried to do these things so that, you know, if you want to support Sage, you can buy a t-shirt or something like that. And so yeah, like Lucy said, we're always looking for new ways and to find support and to keep our little studio going.
Great. Is there any other questions from the audience or any last minute things that you all would like to share?
I just want to thank everybody for listening and for being here. And thank you to Kelly and to Sam. Sam, do you have any last minute thoughts you want to share? Anything you want to say before we sign off?
Of course. Guess what I'm working on?
What are you working on?
Another Space Jam poster.
Oh, awesome. Is this inspired by the Space Jam remake?
Oh, yes. Starring me and SpongeBob? Yes.
Cool.
Based on Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan.
That sounds awesome.
Uh-huh.
Sam, are you excited to I don't think you've had a chance to come and visit the new studio space, but I'm excited to have you get to see it. I think there's more light and it's a little bit bigger, and I think you're gonna really enjoy it.
Really?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Katie, Lucy, Sam, Kelly, for joining us today. And
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was great having y'all and getting to learn more about Sage. Everyone, be sure to check out Sage Studio on Instagram. Their handle is Sage Studio ATX, and visit their website, sagestudioatx.com, to discover more artists and to purchase some of their work as well. Next, for Creative Standard, we have a workshop on March 31st called Art in the Garden with Don Hewitt, Director of Community Engagement at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, who will talk about the history and current need for contemporary art and garden spaces. And I'd also like to extend an invitation to everyone to make an appointment to view our current exhibition in the Big Medium Gallery, titled Wildlife by Manik Raj Nakra, which will be on view through May 1st. And you can learn more about both of those events at bigmedium.org. All right, well, thank you again, everyone, and hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.